Guys, Roland here. Today is one day after the last full moon, but you know what that means. I am here recording a podcast with an amazing guest you are already familiar with, who is going to talk to us about this full moon, next 2 weeks, and what to expect. You get to meet her right after this. Welcome to Conversations with Roland, where the goal of the show is to learn life secrets through diverse experiences. I am your host, Roland Achenjang. Guys, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Roland. As always, I am super excited to record these conversations, and today's no different. Today with me is a guest you are already familiar with, here to talk to us about this full moon and what to expect from it. I am speaking about none other than my very good friend, Wendy Reitz. Wendy, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, Roland. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited.
Good.
Giddy.
Good.
A little bit giddy.
Giddy. Yes, I noticed that on our kind of pre-conversation, but we have we can kind of talk about why we might feel that way. I feel the same way.
Yeah. You're in a new location, having the same old place. But but yeah, I do feel a little bit giddy, a little bit bubbly, and I'm excited to talk about this full moon. And just for anyone who's watching this, we are recording this one day after the full moon. And it's what we're doing. Essentially, there's nothing else to say about that.
Yeah. Life happens. That's what I like to say.
Life happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, Wendy, I know it's always great, especially how you explain what the previous 2 weeks, beginning with the new moon, would have prepared us for the experiences that we had yesterday with the full moon, and then of course the ongoing 2 weeks. And just to recap, right, we're talking about the Mars and Pluto's unity moon cycle here. So yeah.
Okay. Well, let's start with Pluto, because I think it's such an amazing experience, like in this moon cycle, to really, resonate with Pluto. And Pluto has to do with the deeper desires, okay? Instinctual, direction that, like I think I used before, like a flock of birds that are in flight, and they're synchronized and they're in harmony and they all move and flow, and there's ripples in it. And as a species, we're no different than that. And so it's this deeper desires and directions is trying to pull us together like a flock of birds in harmony all the time. We have an individuated aspect to us, just like each bird does. But if we tap into those deeper desires and instinctual direction, that's when we come together in inclusiveness in a unified species. And so that's what this moon cycle is all about. Each of us in our own way has some deeper desires that could come, that well up within us, that we usually suppress. And it's those desires that are brought into our conscious awareness. Now we have Pluto and we have Mars. And those instinctual desires and direction needs help to bring it into our conscious awareness. And that's where Mars comes in. So it's this combination of those two influences that bring it into our conscious awareness and then bring it into our reality. And we manifest those suppressed kind of desires and directions. So in this moon cycle, you might notice you connecting more collectively with other people, or, it could take many different forms. But in the first week, that direction is the deeper instinctual direction is brought into your awareness as concepts and ideas or impressions. And then as we went through the first quarter, those are brought into your conscious awareness, which I always like to think of a sprout bursting through the soil. And so this last week has all been about those concept, ideas, or impressions have taken form, and they've grown, and they've actually, they are experiences within our reality. And so then by the time we get to the full moon, they've come to full maturity, and they bloom in a new self-expression. So yesterday, which is kind of fun, we're the day after the full moon, because we can talk about, how we feel different with a new self-expression. And this can all happen. You can just go about your whole agenda and not ever bring to your awareness a full moon expression. And you don't use the comparison. Wow, how have I changed from the new moon to the full moon? And how do I feel different? Because that's what it's really all about, is how you feel different. And you can bring your awareness and reflect upon that. And it's such a learning potential about yourself.
Yeah, it is. Excuse me as I clear my throat there. Wendy, always fascinating the way you explain what influences are being presented to us during, a moon cycle, and what you just did, in particular this moon cycle with Mars and Pluto. And the way it hit me, it has to do with my subconscious beliefs and attitude, or my relationship with the Christian teachings. And there's a long story about this. If you've been listening to my podcast or following any of my content, you'll know that I was raised Catholic Christian. And then when I started meditating, it was primarily to cope with work and school stress, but there was this underlying frustration with the Catholic teachings, because I felt that they were very, very limiting, because it didn't translate in a way for me in my real life that made me feel comfortable, right? It didn't. And so part of the reason why I really continued to pursue my meditation practice and reconcile the experiences I was having was because it was expanding my consciousness in a way that was very, very much of a contrast to what my Christian upbringing and teaching were. And so right after my awakening, I had this feeling of contempt, like honest contempt towards Christian, or the way I was raised as a Catholic, personally, the way I was raised. And that contempt was because I've tapped into this new expanded awareness, and I thought, the Catholic Church is limiting. It's not teaching you everything you need to know, and why are they doing that? That's awful. The more I've experienced more of this expanded consciousness and awareness, I've actually gotten to a point where I appreciate the role that the Catholic Church played for me and my path on this spiritual endless journey that we're all on. And it has changed my views tremendously, right? Because if you look at every relationship you've had, whether it's with an organization or an individual, as you have continued to journey through your life on Earth, they're all pointing you towards a direction where eventually you wake up to these realizations and then build on it. And so this last 2 weeks, what had happened is I was having a conversation with my wife about, our daughter and whether she's going to go to the Catholic Church and all that jazz. And I'm thinking she doesn't need to, right? It's like a stepping stone. And she has somebody in her life, me, who has gone through it. And so I can bypass it, right? I got all this knowledge. I can bypass it. But then I thought, but I should, since I can just quickly feel and in my truth know that all religions are espousing the exact same information in unique ways. And, once you tap into this knowledge, you can see how, whether it's a religion or a school subject like mathematics or English or philosophy, they're all headed back to the same place, right? And it made me feel like that was an easy cop-out answer. Oh, you're all spewing the same thing. We're done. But then I thought, what would happen if I went back now and really read the Bible, right? And I'd always said that's not going to happen. I don't need to. All right. I'd prefer to read the Bhagavad Gita. It's short, straight to the point, that kind of thing. But here I am. I went ahead and bought this book. It's called A Companion Bible. It's a huge book. It looks very big. And that's what I've been reading over the last 2 weeks. And it's actually helped me in a way that I could not have predicted. It's made me, along with the writer's journey, right, that I'm reading.
Oh, yes, you got that book.
I did. And both books have helped me interpret my dreams better.
Yes.
That's how it's come out for me. And part of my dreams, especially with the first week, there was a lot of purging going on. A lot of purging. And then now with the second week, or this last week, right up into the full moon, it was, as you're always purging, essentially, right? Especially with this this period where we're in, where we're kind of tilling our soil and preparing for the next overarching, new moon of the year. But it's really helped me interpret my dreams a lot better, where it's not just a literal, this is what's happening. A classic example.
Is it more symbolic?
It's more symbolic. It's more theoretical. And it's just nuts. Even numbers. This huge companion book has an explanation for the meaning of spiritual numbers in a way that some of it I've seen and you can read online. But this one's very different. Like, okay, this is what the Christian meaning of these numbers are. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can take that from these teachings. No one taught me this in a Catholic when I was raised Catholic, right? But you see that all this sort of universal information is baked within what the Bible actually is trying to tell you. But through your Catholic teachings, that information might not be presented to you because of the level of consciousness of the person teaching you. And it's not bad, but it's more of it's a call for you if you're on the path to say, well, what do I want to find out for myself? Then you go buy the book and do it. So that has been what I've been doing the last 2 weeks.
I love it. Okay. So let's look at the bigger picture, Roland. In the year, we are at that fall equinox that goes to the winter solstice, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is the period of reorientation and release. All right. Mm-hmm. So you already had a conceptual understanding of the Bible and your religious upbringing, So you're in the reorientation phase. And so what you have been doing the last 2 weeks is reconfiguring that understanding. Okay?
Absolutely.
So you were still holding it and you weren't resonating with it anymore, Mm-hmm. So you've gotten this new interpretation of it that you're reading and you're readjusting your understanding. And for some reason right now, that is very important for you to do for the whole next year. That's preparing you for your next year of growth. It's like,
absolutely.
And think about how that is, our religious teachings that we're exposed to when we're very young, they're at the base of our mental construct. They're foundational concepts within our construct. And so a lot of things are built on them in the rest of our construct. And so when you go in and what you're doing, which you're re-understanding them from a new light, okay? Mm-hmm. And those concepts are probably still there. They've just been tweaked a little bit, which changes the whole rest of your construct in a gentle way, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what's going on with me with this. And parallel to that, or it's not really parallel since it's still me. It's the way I'm expressing myself as Roland, experiencing life on planet Earth. It's the same thing is going on with C2 Keep, with my business, even with Roland at Achenjang.com. All of that's still going on. But I just thought to highlight this as that was significant for me because I have the King James Bible with me, and I'm just like, okay, I got that as a gift. I'm never going to open and read it because I'm going to find out the same information. But something compelled me to buy this companion book where besides just the Bible verses, it has like deep explanations for what they mean. And I mean, it's like researched and everything. And granted, it also has its limitations because I'm reading some things and they don't resonate. But It's very detailed, right? And I'm like, oh, this is neat. Okay. This is cool.
So this is a great example for everybody listening. All right, because this is your experience the first 2 weeks of the moon cycle. So how does unity come into that experience? Because, is it giving you a bigger perspective collectively, isn't it?
It is. It's how. Besides the fact that I already do very much, at least from, I would say, a 60,000 foot level, appreciate what, like I said, every organization or every person and the role they played for me as I journey and continue the journey. I already do that, but now it's giving me a little bit more of a nodal connection, so that I can really understand. Okay, this is why the Catholics taught this, and this is the reason behind it. And then the second part is, if I come to a place where I need to speak and explain my position to maybe somebody who is currently very much practicing within that, the conversation is different, right? It at least to some level I can put myself in your shoes, and then go a little bit further.
Yes.
And that's a big part of it.
Yeah. So it's really okay. So this moon cycle is so much about that, to give us that larger projection of the collective, the unified collective, and how. So like in your situation, it was like, okay, this is what I used to believe that no longer resonates with me, but now this is a new interpretation of it, which just kind of blows this out of the water a little bit and brings it together in a more in a higher perspective, basically.
Yeah.
But that the Pluto aspect is so expansive and vast. It's very and I love how the Pluto's orbit. I don't know if we talked about that, where Pluto's orbit goes really far from the sun and it freezes. The planet freezes. And then as it comes back towards the sun, it melts. And so you have, if you really think of that symbolically, it's pretty cool.
It is.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm also thinking about it in terms of the beings who are on there would have to basically adjust to a life of extreme cold and then monsoons from it melting, right?
So it's it has a lot of water, and then it comes back around and it melts, and then the water redistributes itself when it goes back to freeze.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always think of the characteristics of the planets like that is how they influence consciousness, because that's really what they're doing. The planets are all aspects of our consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, metaphorically, in a way, it could be, you have this foundational belief that's kind of solidified for a time being, and you use that to create until it melts and has to shift again. So if it's more flowy, at that point, it's more malleable, and you're, readjusting it, probably building new banks to hold the water within the channel that you want it to flow through. Maybe you add a dam to hold things back. So that's how it hits me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, let's focus a little bit on the chakras. Now, this is, I know with this one, this is the third eye chakra. And so tell us a little bit more. I think we talked about this last time already, but.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting, because before we came on, remember, I took a moment of kind of meditation, and Pluto, the way I experience Pluto is this upside down funnel. And it comes together at the top, and that's very symbolic of like the third eye, if you think about it, because the third eye is taking all that you can access all this knowledge and wisdom, and the third eye brings it through and creates it in form, or translates it in form.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the funnel that I kind of feel is you can tap into so much information and wisdom and knowledge. And then it's like the third eye is what brings it through and translates it. So a lot of people, all of my work has to do with the third eye, is resonating with that holographic field of information and knowledge, and then bringing it through and creating different types of expressions and form for people to understand it.
Can we talk about that a little bit before we get into, this new moon week and then what the third quarter moon week's gonna, have in store for us, and explain to folks with synchronicities. I ended up in this consciousness cafe Zoom experience during this last 2 weeks, and there I shared, my experience. It resonated with a lot of people. But one of the things I noticed was that, which is part of the Earth life journey, is when you're trying to figure out who you are, you recognize that there's so much information out there that you can access. You can access meditation. You can go through religions. There's so many Christian religions. You can be Muslim. You can do like tantric yoga. You could do Kundalini yoga. You can take drugs and psychedelics. They're just, since the information is so vast, you can see how it can be confusing for somebody who's trying to figure out who they are if they're dabbling into all of these things. For someone who's there, and one of the people who was talking at this consciousness cafe felt that way. They said, all of these, I'm talking to all these sort of spirits within each one of these avenues that you can explore. And then now I feel just overwhelmed because some of it might be conflicting, but it's not really helping me ground myself. Is there a way to, give them advice in this point, especially since, Pluto kind of resonates with that expansion of consciousness through multiple avenues, what you can do to rein it in a little bit?
Yeah. So, okay. Everybody has a certain dynamics to their consciousness. And it includes a purpose, it includes a focus. And so this is like subconscious direction that's established when you're incarnated. When you're, even before that, where, and that subconscious direction there's a lot of guidance. It's like a mixture of your subconscious direction with guidance from higher consciousness. So when you're sampling all these different things, you're going to have definite guidance on which one is most productive for you or pertinent at this time. But you have to be able to open your mind. It's not what you're thinking or a deductive reasoning with it, it's how it feels vibrationally. So if you go into exploring all these different spiritual avenues with your mind, yes, it can be very confusing because you're trying to use deductive reasoning. But in truth, the spiritual aspect of yourself knows exactly what's right for you at any given time. So it's really about, even when you're Googling something, you come up with 5 or 6 different things and you can kind of feel which one feels right. And you go with that one.
Yeah.
And so just the initial phases of a spiritual journey that's what you're really learning, because you might start down one path or one discipline, and you get to a certain point and you're like, oh, this isn't, you're going to feel if it doesn't feel right. And then you try something else and it's like, wow, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and every person is unique. Every person has a different purpose, and so all of those samplings are pertinent to, some individual. That's their path or that's their journey and that's what they're going to learn. It all is pointing in the same place. Everyone's coming to the same beautiful experience of themselves as one. And it's just a matter of, like I say, the path is the same, the steps are different for each person.
Yeah.
Yeah. That they take.
I love it. Going back to feeling is really huge. I think I feel as well. It really is, because that would be your most trusted sort of compass when you're doing anything. And I speak that way too today, especially with my business partners. I say, oh, that doesn't feel right. It's weird.
Right.
I can find all the data to, logically disprove why it's the right decision to do. I'm like, oh, it doesn't feel right. This is what feels. This is what sounds right. This is what feels right. Okay. So if they're listening, and I hope they are, because I was like, hey, you should listen to Wendy's bi-weekly podcast with Roland. So this one's for you, my friend. Now let's go to this, this full moon week starting, of course, November 19th, which was yesterday. We're recording today, depending on when you see this video. It's not going to make sense to you, but starting November 19th, we have this eclipse. We had a lunar eclipse full moon. So that must mean something.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so I study astrology according to consciousness and the evolution of consciousness compared to the direct, specific events of astrology. But in a certain, like with an eclipse that just happened, and I was on a Zoom meeting yesterday where it was really fun. We were talking about it. But if you notice, our illumination, the illumination that we experience, we are very conditioned with it. Like the sun, it's like we know what the sun feels like. And then when a cloud goes over, we know what that feels like. So we kind of move through our days with not really noticing that the illumination has changed in any way. But when you have a lunar eclipse, the illumination completely changes to what we normally feel. And so it kind of wakes us up like, oh my gosh, that's weird. That house doesn't look like it's ever looked before. Or so the people that were up in the middle of the night experiencing the eclipse, that's the first thing they said to me. I was not able to see it. But the first thing they said was everything looks so different in the light when the eclipse is happening, because it's changing the kind of illumination that we're conditioned, we're familiar with, that's usual. So think how symbolic that is, where when a lunar eclipse happens, it changes our perspective because we're looking at it in a different light.
Literally.
And
figuratively. Yeah.
Yes. So that's how I understand lunar eclipses, is that even though I didn't see the lunar eclipse, the illumination has changed for everybody because it happened as a consciousness. And so from the point of the eclipse, everything just got tweaked a little bit for everyone consciously. And since it was on this particular full moon, I think it tweaked it, or I feel it tweaked it in a more collective way because it's with Pluto.
I see. Yeah. And then, so over the next 2 weeks, what can we expect?
Okay. So the next 2 weeks, you have a new self-expression. And we're going to go through a couple days of the moon's influence, and with this eclipse too. And so it's the first part, these days that right after that eclipse and right after the full moon, is there's going to be a lot of reflection. So I always think of the full moon as if a flower just bloomed, and you can see in the center of the flower, and you can see all that inherent, the different inherent aspects of the flower. And so that's really what's going to happen at the first. We're going to have a very deep reflective period on the difference we feel now compared to the new moon. And that's really our new self-expression. So this new self-expression that has to do with more instinctual direction is going to be incorporated into our consciousness. And we're going to go through this next week where we kind of demonstrate and explore this new self-expression with friends and relationships. And when we do that, what happens is it solidifies it within our consciousness. And then when we go through the third quarter, what has been solidified then gets incorporated into our mental construct. It reorients. And so you can kind of think of this moon cycle is really reorienting everyone to a more unified collective consciousness.
While still being individuated at the individual level. It's interesting. So with me, what has happened, at least starting yesterday in particular, and it's so weird, it's a shift in focus of one of my chakras. So this is primarily influencing our third eye chakra. But mine has shifted back to my heart chakra, chakra number 4. And I don't know why. I do know why. It's part of the heart math conversation I was having with one of my clients. And it just shifted there, where it was like last night and this morning and throughout the day today and the rest of the day yesterday after that one-on-one session, it's been more heart-centered type of, I would say, genesis of what I say or do or how I am wherever I am. If I go, like I went to the store this morning and there was just this desire to sit there and do a heart chakra meditation in the whole store, like that kind of stuff. I don't know how long this will last, but it's like yesterday and today. That's been, that's been my focus.
If you think about what I just said about a flower, when I'm talking about you look into that center, that's your heart center.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and it also feeds very much into the feeling of how you are towards anything, whether you're trying to make a decision about something or trying to understand if something is for you. That feeling really, it comes from there. It's not up here. Sometimes it's in your gut as well, like a gut feeling. But right now, for some reason, it's the heart. The heart feeling is where Roland's messing around with. So we'll see what comes from it.
I think that's great that you shared that, Roland, because that's truly where we're all connected. Through the heart, you know, that's the chakra, that's where the interconnectedness really is.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see how Pluto, unity, and then, you know, you're feeling that deeper collective connectedness within you. That heart chakra is opening up. Yeah. That's cool.
It is cool. I feel like this is an infomercial for heart math as well. Go check it out. I don't use it personally, but
I haven't actually used that, but I have heard so much about it. Like people use it first thing in the morning, and they say that it changes the way they experience the day completely.
Yeah, of course it will. It's like meditating in the morning. One thing I do want to throw out as a disclaimer is don't let it be something that you're addicted to dictate how you are. Use it as a measuring tool, the way somebody who's trying to lose weight would use a scale, right? It tells you this is how you feel right now, but you still need to kind of do the work, the heart work to get back to, you know, sort of the level you want to be at.
Well, and you know, Roland, I have something to add too with when people are sampling all those different avenues that they could go down on their spiritual journey. I have found that for me, I do a lot of things like stepping stones are very fast for me. You know, I experience it and then it's like I understand it and then I go on. But what I have found over many, many years is some people get to a point and that's really what they're here to study, you know?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so there's no measurement between you doing something and someone else doing something because it's so entirely unique. And so you can feel like I would get in a spiritual group and I'd be in it for about a year and I'd be like, then I would sit there and realize that this is the same conversation we already had, you know? And I'd be like, well, we can't do that. But it was really instrumental for the other people to have the same conversation again. And and I thought, oh my gosh, I think that's what I look for to move on, to go to the next thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know?
And that speaks to knowing who you are too.
Yeah. To be compassionate that, you know, we're on the same path, but everybody's steps are different. And some people stay in the same place a little longer or a little shorter. And, and you just have to keep that in mind, that it's more of a web or a net that everybody's just moving through.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of a line.
This is true. This happened over the last 2 weeks. And I've not even talked to you about it. So I'm doing it on air right now. And this is going to be crazy. Before we talk about the third quarter moon week and then close this podcast. But with what you're talking about, I feel the same way. Now, it's not about everything. So with me, meditation is something that I don't ever see will ever go away. Well, I'm not going to say I'm done meditating. I think that's okay, you got to study this, keep going. But with everything else, it is a quick stepping stone. And one of them is these podcast conversations that we're having. And I kid you not, this last week was the very first time where I thought, this next year is probably going to be the last episodes of conversations with Roland with the moon cycle. I'm not kidding, and I've not even talked to you about this, but I was thinking, okay, we started around April, and that was, it wasn't the beginning of the year, but starting with this next, not the next moon cycle, but when we start with the yearly one, and if we do one more year, that's a full year, and I'm like, that'll be complete. And I go, that's going to be the end, right? That's going to be the end of this bi-weekly conversation. I kid you not. And so when you said that, it resonated with me. I've not even told Wendy that was an insight that came, and I even asked her how she felt about it. But it really was, that's going to be a completion of this, and we'll have to build on it somehow.
Okay, so think about it though, Roland. There's a point where you have understood all the concepts of the moon cycles and the different, influences and how the whole thing works. So it gets to the point where, and the people who are listening, they're learning with you, right? So you complete that, and then, we can still have them available for everybody. They don't have to be kind of live ones that we're doing, because it's a cycle. It's a way that it is. And so once you understand how the cycle works and all the influences, then you take that with you. You don't have to keep learning it over and over again.
Yeah. And that was kind of like, okay, and then you worry about the folks who need that repetition. And then the point of it was, granted, the dates would be different, but now you can go back because you're going to have a full year. Full year of the moon cycle, and it's repeating. Granted, some of them are going to have 13 moon cycles, which I don't think next year does, right? So, but
2023 is 13.
Yeah. So anyway.
And I'll tell you what, I'm just like, I'm going to learn the 12, and when I get to the 13, then it'll be a whole nother, way of understanding it.
Yeah. All right. Well, third quarter moon week, super, very smooth transition there on our part.
Okay. So third quarter moon week is, so if you look at the year, we're in the fall equinox to the winter solstice. When we get to this third quarter moon week, it is going to be like a double whammy, because the yearly dynamics and the moon cycle dynamics are going to be the same, the same place, the same. And so it's going to be a little more intense, what we're going to experience with reorientation and release. And so, my advice to everyone is to have an objective observation on what's happening, to the best ability that you can. Because, to keep reminding yourself, okay, I'm going to re-understand myself. I'm going to my consciousness is reorienting itself. And there's certain things that I have to release for that to really happen the most effectively that it can, and prepare me for the next moon cycle. So this moon cycle, there's 3 moon cycles between the third quarter and the winter, between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. This is the middle one. This is the second one. So this moon cycle has a circular dynamic to you. You know how we talk about the line, the circle, and the spiral? And this moon cycle has a circle to it. So in that third quarter moon week, everything is going to come back around on itself. So we're going to have like a definite more clarity to it than the our last moon cycle. Like it comes out back around on itself and we go, oh, I get it.
Those are such awesome moments.
Those
aha moments, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so that's truly what a circular dynamic is a aha moment. That's where the aha moments come from.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to add anything to that except what I've always said. It's a great time to meditate, right? And for anyone who's curious, that starts November 27 is when this third quarter. So right after Thanksgiving and then into the first week of December. And I do know you do offer first quarter and third quarter week classes through your...
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm offering right now, I have felt people have really wanted is on the new moon and the full moon, I offer question and answer sessions where I will talk about any topic that anyone wants to explore, or if someone brings a question, and then on the first quarter and third quarter, I offer what's called flow circles, where it has to do with the flow circles are very much about the flow that we step into with moon cycles and the solstices and equinoxes. And in those, we talk more about our experiences and the symbolism within our experiences, kind of like what we do here, Roland.
Yeah.
So on my website, there's you can find on there these events, the next events that are coming up. And you can register, you just register through Calendly, my Calendly, and you'll get all the information. And there's Zoom. Awesome. They're all online Zoom, sessions.
Yeah. No need. For anyone who's watching and or listening, please take advantage of this. I feel so blessed and so lucky that I get, up to an hour with you just about every 2 weeks, one-on-one.
Well,
this is great.
I feel the same way, Roland. I feel very blessed. I love always knowing we're going to check in with each other. It just makes me feel good.
It does. It makes me feel good too. So yeah, we've talked about, this full moon week as well as the third quarter moon week of this, moon cycle. And we've just mentioned a little bit about the chakra and that it's a circle as far as the geometric shapes. I don't think there's anything else to add here. Yeah, we're way over 30 minutes too.
Yeah. Well, and just that everyone, the thing to hold in mind is to be very compassionate with yourself, which we usually are, but a little more that when things start changing, you understand why they're changing, and it's easier to embrace it than to resist it.
Oh yeah, way easier. Yeah. So thank you so much, Wendy. And for everyone who's listening, please make sure to visit Wendy on mewandus.org. I will have links to that website in the notes section of this podcast. Get your hands, if you can, on the Moon Vibes Planner. There's a new one coming out next year, which would be great. And then
Thank you, Roland. This has been a wonderful session. I loved it.
Yeah, likewise. All right, guys. As always, I'd like to invite you to create an amazing day.